Okay, we are live. So we're just getting set up here for anyone who's out there on the internet. I can't see if there's anyone there, but this will be recorded, so you'll see this in the recording. This is our basic income meetup. This is Charlie, Darren, Bethany, Zoltan, and Richard is over there. And I'm Alex, and there are some more people arriving. Hey guys, so we got name tags here. So for this meetup, we've read, or some of us have read two articles. One is a pro-basic income article written by Madeleine, who's over here. Guys, if you want to be on camera, sit in these seats here. If you don't want to be on camera, you can sit over here. So yeah, we have Darren, who's going to be watching the feed. You can let me know if anyone actually joins the live stream. But if someone does and they have questions, post them in the chat, and we can respond to them here. So, yeah.
I've seen your rendering before.
They've seen what I tried to write on the whiteboard last week, so that didn't last very long. Yeah. So we've read two articles.
Yeah.
Yeah. The first one is a blog post by Madeleine. This is Madeleine, and it's entitled "Basic Income: An Idea Whose Time Has Come." Right. And then the second article is from the Economist. These are both from a few years ago. And do anyone remember what the title of the article was?
Basically flawed.
Basically flawed. That's correct. Thank you, Darren. I'm glad every time we do this, someone comes in with like notes or printouts or something. It's really helpful. So we're going to have the what we're going to do is we're going to go through and list some of the main points from each of the articles. So we're going to have the pro-basic income points over here and the anti-basic income points over here. And then we're going to have a discussion about it. So Bethany is going to be manning the whiteboard, and as soon as she's done writing the title of the second, basically flawed. It's a pun on basic income. Yeah, basically flawed. So yeah, so what's going to happen is I'm going to ask the group what are the main points you got out of the articles, and we'll list them on the whiteboard, and then I have some written down that we can add later if you guys don't bring them up.
And are we focusing on the ones in the article for now?
The points from the article, yeah, and I'm sure other points will come up over the course of the discussion. Hello. So let's start with the pro-basic income article. What are some of the main points? We can do hand raising here. Try to keep it a little more organized than last week. So I'm not going to call on you initially since you wrote the article, but we'll definitely, I want to hear a lot of your thoughts as we go. So anyone who read the article, what are some of the main points?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it seems like the article was talking about displacing workers with technology. So efficiency is going to create lots of jobs.
Okay, yep. So workers displaced by technology. That's a good one.
You can call
it. Yeah.
That the result could end up that a dangerously imbalanced political situation might arise.
Yes, so for the people who are receiving the basic income versus the people who are, or the people, no, since there is no basic income,
right.
Just think about the other article actually. Yeah, so people aren't getting what they need, and then they are very unhappy and revolt against the system, that kind of thing. Yeah, so that's a good one. Anyone else? Okay, so I'll add one. I'll say it's so just from the title, an idea whose time has come. So there's this idea that maybe basic income didn't make sense before, but something special is happening in the economy now that's making basic income more relevant than before.
Would you say that that's different from our first point about technology?
Yeah, I'm gonna call it a different point, although it could be just based on that as well. And now I'm going to call on Madeleine to ask her what the main points she was trying to get across, or what some of the main things were.
Well, the main point is inequality.
Inequality.
Yeah. So so that a UBI would help reduce inequality and address poverty, hopefully.
Okay. Reduce inequality and address poverty.
Yeah. And especially that, because now that more and more people, or more and more, the bigger part of the economy is taken up, or, you know, sorry.
That's okay.
Thinking about my car. Not parked in the right place.
Actually, that's okay. I'm gonna.
No, wait. I know what I want to say.
Okay.
Is now that a lot of our money is derived from capital, you know, investment
Right.
in the economy. There is no really. That's what causes this incredible inequality.
So imbalance between capital and labor.
Yes,
Okay.
exactly. And so, in order for this to be reduced, a UBI could actually help people. It would give them a step up towards work, you know, improving their finances.
Help fill in some of the money that's no longer going to labor, or some of that income that they would have gotten from labor previously.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Okay.
you know, what I'm saying is that this new situation where capital is completely separate from income, from wealth derived from income, prevents people from getting ahead.
Right. So the fact that production is not doesn't line up perfectly with labor anymore means that there's a disconnect between what the economy does and the money that people actually get in order to spend.
Right.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Can I ask you a follow-up?
Yeah, go ahead.
Do you have any arguments for why, I don't want to phrase this incorrectly in a way that's going to misbe misinterpreted. Do you have any follow-up argument as to why it's a good idea to have redistribution of wealth?
All right, so let's actually get to that in a little bit. I do kind of want to go through, fill out these main points on the whiteboard, and then get to the other article and fill that one out. But hold that question, and we'll come back to it.
One that hasn't been mentioned yet, but I think it's a solid point, but I thought it was interesting, was the idea that it would allow for other social benefits, like people spending more time with their children and their parents, their aging parents.
Yep, that's a good one.
Unpaid labor.
Right.
Right. Allows for
Unrecognized labor.
Right. Okay. So here's a big one from the beginning of the article, which is that it should be a human right for people to be able to live comfortably, not in poverty. So I think that's a big theme throughout the article. I don't want to block the camera here, but I do want to read what's on the screen. Let's see. Basic income is meeting people's basic needs is necessary for security and liberty. I guess we've already covered this, but wages have been flat. Owners of capital are getting richer, while workers are getting poorer. So that's the capital versus labor division. So here's one that I liked. Free market is good at allocating resources, but was not designed for sharing prosperity. So I have some questions about that, and we'll get into that when we get to that point in the discussion.
What was the first part of that quote?
The free market is good at allocating resources, but not designed for sharing prosperity. Anyone feel free to think of big points from the article. I'm just going through the ones that I wrote down. Those with property, those who are rich, took that property from society, the product of human contribution. So it feels like maybe, yeah. So I guess that's the point. And another point is that we can already afford, we know we can afford a basic income because we already spend a lot of money on subsidies, on other subsidies. So maybe this brings up the question of, you know, can we cut some of those other subsidies and fund the basic income that way if the other subsidies are less efficient? 1970s income project in Canada demonstrated that people actually keep working when you give them a basic income. So I think that's a good point.
Also,
yeah.
in this other article, maybe I'm jumping the gun here, but he says that he doesn't like UBI because it says it would be against employment, basically.
Yeah.
So he disagrees with this, yeah.
But in fact, that project showed that people started to work more.
Right.
So we want to put it on this side. His argument is that over enough time, people will stop working because the stigma against work will go away, which you could just.
Right. So why don't you put that in a point for the other article?
Yeah.
Yes. Well, I mean, we're writing down all the main points, and I think we can kind of dig into both of these articles and really figure out what's there and what makes sense. Basic income helps the economy partly because it would be invested. So the income that people get might be invested in doing other economically productive things or businesses and things like that. We shouldn't wait until half the population is unemployed. I guess that's kind of covered by the current points. And I think a big one here is that, and this is related to the human rights thing, but Madeleine says it's a question of ethics and rights. So the debate about basic income is fundamentally about, you know, do we believe in human rights and it's the right thing to do according to your article. Okay. Anyone have any other main points from the? Yeah.
I think it might come up as we sort of do that.
Okay. And we can add to these some of these main points too. Okay, so here's the next one, basically flawed. Anyone any say things that people notice from me? Yeah, go ahead, Richard.
Well, what's to stop people from immigrating to the country that has basic income and then not working?
Right. So there's a lot of complications with immigration,
which then can lead to more protectionist policies that shut the door on immigrants.
Right. Yep.
I think the first thing you mentioned is work providing people with meaning and identity.
Work provides people with meaning and identity. That's a good one.
He calls it that work. He calls it an asset, or the way the word he uses to describe work did not really make sense to me.
I don't necessarily
meaning, structure, and
identity. Employment are the same thing. So
not what it stands for, but the word. I forgot what the word he used.
I don't know if he called it an asset.
Not an asset. Okay, that's the wrong word. But he called it something that I thought was a strange description.
And I don't know what it is.
It's the very first paragraph.
I'm kind of like using my computer, but it's also the most important institution.
Oh, institution. Yeah. Labor. Is not an institution.
Yeah. Okay. Anyone else? Any big points from this one?
well, he argues that the time is not come. That's basically kind of an argument that
Right.
the forces that would drive us to UBI have not materialized yet. So this would be down and destabilizing the system unnecessarily.
Right. It'd be premature to think about basic income today because we don't have, half the people unemployed and all of that.
Well, no, what it seems to argue is that and it sounds like it's come from a very corporate perspective, is that we actually need to deregulate and stop occupational licensing in order to open the market for more employment. That's the argument it's trying to make.
Yeah, so you're saying instead of a basic income, he wants to tweak the existing system through measures such as deregulating the labor market and that kind of thing.
I have one last thing, if you know.
Yeah, go ahead.
The next thing he goes on to talk about is the cost. Saying that, well, we're not sure what the outcome will be, we certainly know we're going to have to pay.
Right. So we know that it's going to be very expensive.
That was pretty much the required complaint about the expansion of the size of state, so that the state would become more controlling, which leads to regulation.
Yep.
This is an interesting one. I'm just going to read it right off. The universal basic income will destroy the conditionality on which modern welfare states were built. It seems to be that if you start paying people to stop working, you elaborate more on that. If you start paying people, eventually, once the stigma is gone, they'll stop working.
Yeah.
And they become,
blobs.
What's that?
I don't think that's the word.
I can't remember the words I'm describing. Basically, they become alienated, and eventually, society will divide into those who produce and those who don't produce, and ultimately that will lead to conflict.
Right. I remember that part.
There'd be resentment from those paying the taxes. Yeah.
So those who are net receiving more benefits.
This all sounds very.
Yep. Okay, let me see if I have anything else on my list to add to that. Basic income answers a problem has not yet materialized. We've got that one. And he also makes the argument that historically, as jobs are eliminated, they're replaced by new jobs. So why won't that happen again? Why won't that continue to happen?
He also says that the fact that it would be unconditional would create tension between the poor people who get UBI and the rich people.
I think we got that one. There's nothing from those paying the taxes to fund it. Yeah. We should focus on making today's system better. Government should make use of the tools they already have. We should be investing in public infrastructure and doing things like that. You don't need to write all these down. You're kind of covered by what we've already got. Making it possible for countries to have immigration. I think the other major point is we would upend, this is a direct quote from the article, we would upend society with radical welfare reforms premised on a job-killing technological revolution that has not yet materialized. So that's that in short. Okay. So we've got our main points here. Does anyone have any other points from the article to add?
And then we can start getting into the discussion. Okay. So let's start with the pro-basic income argument. So let's start with the title. Let's start with this one. Basic income is certainly an idea. Is it an idea whose time has come? What makes now the time? Anyone have any thoughts?
Well, my opinion is that technology is enabling efficiency to grow at a rate faster than we can create new markets, and that's what's ultimately going to lead to the loss of jobs and lead to structural unemployment. So technology is going to start accelerating.
Okay. But yeah, I mean, hasn't technology been accelerating for a while?
Yeah, I think it has to do with there's been global expansionism, and the globe has been covered now.
Okay.
So to get new markets, we can't just go places. We have to actually create material goods for people to buy.
So before we were
to create a problem.
Before we were going places more.
Yeah, before we were creating markets by traveling.
By traveling.
And
that's an interesting point. So now that we're in a global economy, we don't have that option anymore.
Right, now that's become from actual thought.
Okay, I think that's right, and I think that's, you know, a lot of things in today's economy are changing at fundamental levels in ways they never have before. But in the past, you know, when the Industrial Revolution happened, when other things happened, things were changing. You know, stuff was happening that had never happened before. So this is an example of that. What makes this particular?
Was it his point that that happened, but also like at the same time there was an expansion of the people you could reach, and so you were like way more efficient with the technology, but you also had a huge market of people all the time.
Right, so you
So
have
it's ever
great
expanding.
potential. Now we're going to do a group call.
Yeah, and I think that is a valid point. But I think you could make similar arguments about technological changes that happened in the past. Like there was really good. I mean, like you remember the Luddites, or we've heard of them. You know, there are really good reasons to have believed at various points in history that the markets are not going to create new jobs. And I think this is a really good reason, but I think there have been really good reasons in the past too. And I do think this time is different, but I think those other times were each individually different as well. So yes, what you're saying is compelling, but it's not. It doesn't seal the deal for me.
So you're saying there could be some unforeseen ways which would be able to create.
Yeah.
I'm not done yet.
Okay, keep going.
So it's possible that in order to grow new markets, we need something like a UBI to start creativity, because right now we're seeing more and more concentration of organization and less ideas circulating in a market and kind of architecture. So it seems like corporations are getting larger and more powerful, and small businesses being kind of compressed.
Sure.
In an equal creative way. And UBI will open up the creative powers of maybe the individual to start small businesses and do creative things without worrying about being constantly employed in something.
Okay.
So it may be a part of creating new markets, not necessarily, you know, antagonized by the new people.
Okay. So let's go to other. Yeah.
That's close to what the question I was asking.
Yeah.
Is there an inherent reason that it's a good idea to redistribute wealth, aside from the fact that we like it? But for a moment, I'm stepping outside of that, and that's the kind of argument that might be something that's useful to talk when you're talking to someone.
I would
who's sort of against it.
Yeah, I would be careful about saying redistribute wealth when talking about a basic.
Well, that's what you're doing.
I know you believe that, and you made that very clear last week. But not everybody does, and I'm one of the people who doesn't. So, and maybe everyone else in the room is with Charlie on this. But in terms of why we should have a basic income, I don't think you need to make the point that it's good to redistribute wealth or redistribute it.
Although that's one of the reasons for this.
It's one of the points in this article, and I guess we can talk about it.
And investing, giving people ability to do something, giving them some money, makes them more productive, and society gets more productive.
It's only it only becomes a redistribution of wealth if there is a tax increase on the wealthy.
Yes.
If it's done via government spending, deficit spending, then it's not a redistribution of wealth. It's just simply a government program.
Some people might argue that the government deficit. No, hold on, Charlie. Some people might argue that the government deficit spending would indirectly cause inflation, which is kind of an implicit tax on the wealthy, or various things like that.
No.
Okay.
I'm not talking about any theory. I'm talking about the fact is, if you give me money, I'm get wealthier.
Yeah, if I give you money, you get wealthier. That's true.
You're redistributing wealth.
Well, I'm distributing it to you.
Well, you're saying I'm not taking it from anywhere. It's coming out of the air and coming to me.
No, it's coming out of
But well, it's coming out of something.
So I think the point we were focused on to begin with is just that there are a couple of different ideas about where it can come from. And so,
Sure.
you know, we might want to separate out the concept of giving people money from
Right. And I think one important thing to keep in mind is just really when you're thinking about basic income and how it works, or any kind of like economic stimulus or something like that, think about the resources that are available to people and the resources that the economy has at its disposal, and whether people have access to those resources and to what degree. So if the economy, you know, hypothetically has the productive capacity to produce a lot more stuff for people, and they're currently not able to access that stuff, and then we give them access to that productive capacity, and the economy starts producing more for them. That doesn't mean you're taking wealth or taking money away from other people. It just means you're activating something that was already there, that they just didn't have access to.
A similar argument is happening in what people were already talking about.
Right.
So this idea of if you're investing in things and creating markets or creating markets through spreading, that's also kind of not just redistributing wealth, it's in a sense kind of creating wealth in different kinds of ways.
Sure.
Like during the Great Depression, a bunch of wealth disappeared, but the resources were still there. Like it's like saying, oh, no, we don't have any more inches, so we can't create a new building or whatever.
Yeah.
Right. We don't have any more inches. Yeah, so I'm glad you brought up the Great Depression because, I look back on the Great Depression and I would ask, we still had all of the raw resources and materials in the economy, yet everybody got poor. Why did that happen?
Not everybody.
Well, not everybody, right? There's
But
a large number of
wealth
people.
was destroyed.
Wealth was destroyed. Money was destroyed, certainly.
Wealth was destroyed.
Money is a form of wealth.
Money is a token that represents wealth.
It represents wealth, and it's useful. You trade it for.
Wealth is what you have.
Wealth is what you have. Wealth was destroyed in the Great Depression. So, what do you guys think would have happened if we had a basic income during the Great Depression?
A lot less severe.
Okay, how would we have paid for it?
The only way I can see of paying for redistributing the wealth is redistributing the wealth.
The taxes is pretty much an income program.
Yeah, a lot of people think that. That is a common view, even among.
I'd like to hear that.
Go ahead, George.
A quick question. Surely contradicts himself.
That's
Because
not
Sorry, it was perfect. The phrasing was perfect.
last time, Charlie, remember you said that if you get $1 million a month and spend $1 million, you have no wealth.
You haven't added to your wealth.
What?
You have not added to your wealth.
Okay, not that if I didn't have anything and started getting $1 million and
spending,
I still don't have.
All right, guys, we're gonna get.
Give you any money.
All right, guys, we're gonna get back to the.
So what's the contradiction?
Yeah. So we're gonna get back to the points on the board.
We're
So-
dedicated this time to staying on.
Yeah, we're gonna try to stay more focused on the topic this week, but I do encourage everyone afterwards to, if there's something specific you want to talk about in future meetups, tell me and don't stop bothering me until we have a meetup scheduled for.
And we've got the notes from last time, so we'll try to go around.
Yeah, we do have the notes from last time. There's a lot to work through here. This is only our third meetup. And the first one that's live stream. Okay, Darren, is there anyone on the live stream?
There are 2 people, but nobody is asking questions.
Cool. Hi, 2 people. Hi, Mom. I think you're one of the 2 people. Yeah. So basic income is this time fundamentally different? I think there's a lot of arguments, especially from Ron, about why it is, and I really like that point about globalization, how we kind of like reached the limit of expanding throughout the globe. I think that's a really cool point.
Does anyone else have something about?
Anyone else have anything
like,
specific
what
about that?
why the time is now, kind of why things are different, or do you want to add more?
Well, technology, because it contributes to the inequality. There's less available for the majority.
So just technology for the people on the stream. So the technology is just more now, and it's contributing to more and more inequality.
And another thing I heard in that argument is that we're already seeing new trends. So one reason people might think the time is now is that we're already seeing prosperity that's not being distributed and kind of inequality growing and that kind of thing.
We're already seeing prosperity that's not
seeing
being
the signs,
distributed.
like that's
Definitely
Yeah.
having increased inequality of wealth.
We are having increased
The
inequality.
question again comes back as to why is that bad?
Why is that bad? No, don't laugh. I mean, it's okay to laugh, but I also think it's a really good question.
Yeah.
Why is inequality bad? Like we talk about inequality all the time, like it's this really horrible thing. But why is it bad? I think that's a question we can ask later too. So we're gonna stay.
And that's really related to the argument that
Oh,
You can ask him that.
yeah, let's ask him that. Okay, so go ahead, Charlie. Why is inequality bad?
Well,
Or do you think it's bad?
I do,
Okay.
but I have to say I have a weak argument for it. And that's why I'm hoping to hear a better argument for it, so I keep asking.
Okay.
The weak argument is that if you look empirically around the world,
Yeah.
those societies in which wealth was more evenly distributed seem to be more productive, they grow faster. For example, the United States in 1940 to 1970, after we had a tremendous amount of wealth destruction, and people sort of started out at a little bit more even level, we had a tremendous boom. I have no idea, I have no way to prove that that was because we were all more equal, but it's just an empirical link to societies that are more even, more production.
Yeah, that is a pretty big argument.
During the 50s was 90%.
But that's a tax on income. And wealthy people don't pay, they don't have income. So you completely leaving out most of the wealth.
Okay, but the other thing though is that at the comes 1940s and 50s, the reason why that was a booming era is because of the New Deal, because of Social Security and Medicare being implemented, because of the proliferation of trade unions.
Right.
Which declined right in the 1980s and started to raise.
That's the point. Giving some wealth or ability to get income to the poorer people seemed to result in a growing economy. I don't know whether that's cause and effect, but it seems like that's an observation.
Yeah.
That's the point. Now, why aren't we doing that now? Because wealthy people control the country.
So another thing that relates to what Ron was saying is back in the late 1940s and 1950s, Europe was destroyed and Japan was destroyed, and we had all these opportunities abroad for investing, growing, and exporting our products. So there was kind of like this constant influx of money coming into the United States, and we just don't have that situation anymore.
I also think that one thing we're missing out on is the buying power of individuals. We talk a lot about what is the significance of inequity in America, and the significance is that buying power amongst the middle class and the working poor has significantly deteriorated.
Yes.
And so what I mean by that is when we talk about what a basic income might do, it maybe restores a level of choice. When people's incomes go down, they have less choice. And when companies automate and offshore, it brings less income to those at the bottom. Yeah. Not only that, at the same time, as the people at the top get more capital, they use it to merge to make even more capital and give the consumers less choice.
Okay, so I'm definitely hearing an argument from you about why basic income is good, so consumers can have spending power. But let me ask a question. So what if the rich were getting, richer, even faster than they are today, but the poor were also getting richer? Would that be a bad thing? Would the inequality still be a bad thing?
You're missing a couple of points. One is that I think inequality is destructive to a country's democracy.
Yeah.
And the second point is class mobility is greatly interrupted when you have tremendous gaps between countries.
Yeah, I think you're right, especially with your first point. So inequality of wealth means inequality of influence. So you have the power kind of concentrating in the hands of the few. But I think that is a separate point from the points about poverty and people struggling in their day-to-day lives and stuff like that. I don't know that you could attribute that to inequality, except perhaps if you have some idea that rich people somehow want to keep poor people poor, so they're using their influence to do that or something like that. But that doesn't.
Not so much that.
They want to keep themselves rich, but is it necessarily the case that keeping themselves rich entails keeping poor people poor? And I don't know.
It does, because it depends on exploiting.
But we discussed our arguments about inequality, and I think this is a sound one. Like, why would you want to reduce inequality? Yeah, I think he was saying, one reason is to keep economic influence more even.
Keep economic influence more even. I think that's good. I don't. So the word exploit is, I think it's really hard to define what's exploitation and what that means in a free market.
It means asking humans to, to compete for the, so the amount that they command has to be less than what it costs to operate a machine. And so, or asking people who are living one standard of living and asking them to compete with a country that may have a much lower standard of living and a less regulation.
So why is that exploitation? And why is it bad for an employer to do something like this?
Well, it's not bad for the employer.
Why is it bad for society for an employer?
I think exploitation can be defined as kind of coercing people to act against their interests. So having forcing somebody to coerce labor to do something that doesn't benefit you in the long run is definitely exploitation.
So okay, I think that's a really good definition. So if I live in an economy where not having a job, makes me destitute, and then Walmart comes along and offers me a meager wage, and I go, decide to work for Walmart, is Walmart exploiting me?
They are, because the only place you can afford to use that money is at Walmart. And they're the only place in your town because they put all the other businesses out.
Yeah, they do some
Yeah, I mean, sure. Go ahead, Richard.
Well, when I was living in Wisconsin, I lived in a small town of like 9,000 people, and there was pretty much there were very few places to work, but there was a super Walmart came and then to town, and they did all these like restaurants and things opened up around it, and there were a bunch of new places for people to work at, but they're all like really low paid, but they're still places, I guess.
So I guess
This is taking advantage in extreme points and exploitation. So where do you draw that line? Right?
I mean, I choose not to personally, but another question we might ask is, what if in your town there are 10 people who are doing fine, and if they had a job at Walmart, it would boost their incomes a little bit, and they'd be even happier having that job at Walmart. And say those people go to work at Walmart, is Walmart then exploiting them? Probably not, right?
They are, because now that they're making that extra income from Walmart, it convinces the other companies to not have to provide for new employees the same kind of compensation they had for the veteran ones, because of the fact that they can say to themselves, well, they can just get a second job. We don't have to pay them as much.
So here's a more fundamental question. Should employers provide for the welfare of their employees? Is that something they should be obligated to do?
Actually, not necessarily, not always necessarily. They should provide the income, but at the same time, it may be burdensome the way that the structure is set right now for businesses to be, say, forced to pay, especially if they're a startup business, to be forced to pay, let's say, health insurance, which is something that everyone should be given to as a right, no matter what, and be incorporated into the taxes.
There's a general question about whether the government, for example, our company should be responsible for different kinds of things.
Function of the corporation. That's the point.
Yeah,
we're saying are they responsible? What's the function?
Yeah. What is their function?
Their function is to make profits.
Yeah, I agree.
That's not really humanitarian endeavor.
It's not humanitarian. But whose job is it to be humanitarian? Whose job is it to take care of society? Well, yes. And who represents everyone, supposedly? The government.
Well, no, I think people could have different opinions on it. So one view is like, this is the government's role.
Yeah.
Other people might just say, like, because corporations are made up of humans, then like by a separate ethical standard, they should sort of maintain.
There's still for society.
Yeah, right. I think that's maybe bad.
I mean,
that there's some sort of human kind.
The answer to whether something is exploited depends on how you're viewing given society. If you're Marx viewing America, you say it's exploited. If you're a capitalist viewing America, you say it's not exploited. You can't settle it by abstract definition. It depends on what you think is going on in this.
So just for the record, there are a lot of things we're not going to settle tonight. This conversation is interesting. I think, yeah. So, let's come back to the points. We were talking about why is inequality bad, and I think there are some good points, especially consolidation of political influence. And then some people are saying, in order for rich people to be rich, they have to be kind of taking resources from the poor, taking wealth from the poor. I don't know if that's necessarily.
I think the thing else that we were sort of talking about, that it's not just political influence, but maybe like some parity of bargaining power in general. But a way to put what's behind a lot of people's comments on being exploited, like there's political influence literally in politics, but there's also just like some people having way more bargaining power.
Right. So just in the economy in general, you're in a position of power if you're Walmart, and you're not in a position of power if you're a Walmart.
I think George is
yeah. Go ahead, George.
A couple of comments. Number one, as an ex-Soviet, I can assure you that equality does not lead to, how do you put it, like faster development or something like that.
Economic growth.
In the Soviet Union, essentially, compared to this country. Within the Soviet Union, of course, we had some inequality, but compared to any developed Western country, we were equally poor, and it didn't lead to any technological development or anything else. Number one. Number two, just a couple of comments from different.
Before you make this comment, Richard, could you slide that gallon jug of water down this way?
I was going to read it.
I think you might want to.
Okay. Now, whether a corporation should be taking care of its employees depends, and essentially, as far as I can see, depends on the culture of the country. Like in Japan, they did, at least until before the war. And I heard that even today, even though they become more and more similar to America, even these days, big corporations do take care of their employees. Like from telling them when to marry, whatever, everything. And this is why they are so loyal to their company.
Yes. Okay.
I forgot the third one.
That's fine. I think those are good points.
But I think one point there is that, like, on the one hand, companies generally succeed because they make the most profit, but there might be some examples of norm enforcement being successful and kind of giving them to do other things within.
Yeah, I think that's fine. And for the record, I do think corporations should act ethically and be good, members of society. It's not clear to me that their role is necessarily to specifically pay people a certain amount. I do think their role is to earn profit, and that well, there's going to be, whether it's corporations or not, in whatever society you're in, there's going to be someone in that society who's trying to run a business and earn a profit. And maybe that's not what we call corporations.
Companies used to be a lot more socially engaged.
Socially engaged.
Well, what I'm saying is their motive was to make profit, but there was a very large part of their philosophy. They consider themselves as trying to advance or
improve the community that they're in.
Yeah.
That's true.
To give you a perspective, back in my parents' time, or even my grandparents' time for that matter, working at a Sears Roebuck, a retail place like Sears, it was a respectable adult job. And you can actually provide for a whole family, vacations and everything on one income. Now the standard is 2 incomes, which is fine, but it should be double what it was then if it's going to be 2 people. But actually 2 incomes is now not even enough to support a family.
So to kind of circle back to the topic of basic income, we can ask the question, is it a reasonable expectation for us to assume that the labor market is the way that people should get their incomes? So, I mean, like, is this a reasonable expectation that we have of corporations? And I don't know that it is, but I don't know that it ever has been. Yeah.
I certainly would say
So maybe part of the problem is just our belief that the labor market is the way that people should
Well,
live.
that's thinking about labor, income as being the main way you get money is very convenient for wealthy people.
Convenient for wealthy people.
They like that you think that, because they get their money by increased capital. They don't get their money by income. So they're very happy that all these people are fighting over income.
Well, the other thing is that if people have a basic income and they don't have to work, then employers need to be more try to have a package that's more convincing to get people to work for them.
Certainly, some of them will, and maybe some of them won't. Right? Like if maybe there's a job that people really want to work, but they can't afford to work there because the wages are so low. Now, people are going to be able to work at that job. And you have
I was going to say that I think that this is at the heart of what a lot of people are thinking about, though, with respect to people having no bargaining power now without an income from a job, right? So like companies have a lot of bargaining power in a way because there's nothing else people can really turn to when there's very little.
Yeah.
But that would change.
As technology develops, people must get more and more education, to say, must have more and more skills to be even able to start working. Right. If everybody gets that basic income, and I insist, basic income is not about money, because money can be printed in any amount. It is about real stuff that people do consume. It is food, like shelter, clothes, and so on and so forth, something consumable.
Yeah, and if we don't have the resources to provide people food and shelter, a basic income isn't going to help.
No, but okay. But, I try to stay with my thought. Yeah. So, if you get that basic income, which satisfies like those immediate needs, but you don't have extra resources to get some education, and you don't have even the stimulus to get that education, why would I go to college if I have enough to eat and have a roof over my head and that's all? So in this case, there will be no people who could be recruited to work.
Why do you assume that people don't want to go to college just because they can live enough to eat?
It's not true.
Adam would still go to college.
I look at my daughter and her friends. I just see how lots of them would not bother if they are given money now, and they may realize by the age like of 35, they may realize that it will be maybe a little bit better. But in many fields that would be way too late.
So George, I don't know about your daughter and her friends, but I know that there are a lot of people in the world who are intellectually curious, and maybe I'm an optimist, but I think most people are born with kind of this innate sense of curiosity and exploration. And all that.
There are some people like that.
Okay, and that's fine. Okay, and I'm also going to concede to you that maybe there are some people who aren't like that. Maybe your daughter and her friends.
My daughter is very well focused, but it is because she is coming from my family. Who in college take courses on vegetarian cooking in Western Africa under the condition of large scale, something like that. That kind of education really won't provide skills necessary.
Well,
yeah.
So guys, let's go to Benjamin. Hey, George, we're going to go to Benjamin.
Because when I was young boy, my parents told me not to go to school, to then they tell a job, income, and be able to pay your house, food, etc. How can you explain to a kid who wants to play, like innocent and married, wants to go to school, and the disease if you don't get a job later, you will have for what he not for what he needs, but you will have somebody.
Yeah.
So how can you explain that to a kid who is not aware about the consequences of going to school?
Do you need to explain that to a kid?
Otherwise, you will not go to.
But explanation is not enough. In this country, people are looking at those basketball players. And they want to follow their example.
Yeah.
This is the way to get rich.
Right.
Why should we start with
So why do people study today? They just go to one. Why pressure when everybody knew basketball.
I think some people, if we had a basic income that was big enough, maybe we'd have a lot more basketball players. That might be a lot of fun. But we're certainly going to have people who are doing other things too. And part of the reason for that is that the labor market is a market, right? So if there's a demand for labor, employers are going to provide incentive for that labor. So even if you're talking about little kids, if we're having this phenomenon where not enough little kids are doing what they need to do to become, productive laborers, and we don't have enough productive laborers in our society or something like that, then we're gonna address that, right? And if the basic income is so huge that nobody ever wants to work ever, and we're assuming that everybody in this world is lazy or something like that, then that's really not a viable policy. You can't have a basic income, I think. Yeah. Oh, right. Okay, so this gets into the definition of basic income. When some people talk about basic income, they're talking about just the amount of money that's enough to meet people's basic needs. When I talk about basic income, I just talk about a regular amount of money that everybody gets, and it could be well below what's necessary to pay for people's basic needs, and it could also be well above. And there's a certain level that's kind of optimal for the economy. That's kind of the way I think about it. Like, the economy has a certain productive capacity, and how do we get the most out of that capacity for the benefit of the people? So I think it's really difficult to argue that a basic income of 0 is kind of the optimal level. But what level it is, I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, the idea behind the UBI
Yes.
is to, provide the basic necessities for someone to
I think,
for example, that's what we propose.
so that's what you're talking about here in this article. But I would say that the broad definition of basic income is not just about paying for people's basic needs. Right.
every time it has been proposed in the past
Yeah.
history for many times.
Yeah.
It was always the minimum, to address the minimum needs of the person.
No, shelter argument is pretty much common, right?
It's very, very common.
Yeah.
But if the economy doesn't have the resources to provide everyone with food and shelter, there's nothing we can do about it, right?
Sure.
Yeah. And if the economy has the resources to provide with people with way more than food and shelter, then why are we going to stop at food and shelter?
And
That's
just
There are several components. One component is healthcare.
Yeah.
And the other component, you want your society to be sustainable, and this means education. Now, if education and professional skills do not immediately lead to, not necessarily lead, but to, in a short time, lead to some really tangible benefits, I don't see why people would go for that if they have food and shelter.
Right, but I would say that, first I want to separate the notions of education and vocational training. So vocational training is like preparing people for jobs or whatever, and education is just general learning.
So in general learning, you can, as long as libraries exist, you can go to a library, but I don't see libraries to be crowded.
Yeah.
So one thing I want to point out is that we're right at the heart of one of the big debates across these two articles, which is will people be working and will they be working productively?
Yeah.
And I think a point that Stuart brings up that's not directly in here is even if we're adjusting the labor market in the short term, are we somehow going to have a lag problem where people are not preparing for the jobs that they would be incentivized for later, but they actually don't have the skills because they didn't get education, which is kind of an interesting point as well.
That's the answer. If you have a functioning economy and people are not doing certain jobs, those jobs will attract higher.
Right, but I was just pointing out that even if the salary scope of no one has the skills, that's kind of an interesting point. That maybe
Somebody will get the skills to get those.
Right, but if it takes 20 years to get
Maybe
it.
and then I have to move from Massachusetts to Anchorage, Alaska, and maybe
We're having multiple people.
I don't think it's really that relevant to try to figure out what's going to happen to the economy. The question is, should we have a basic income? And I'm claiming that a basic income is a redistribution of wealth.
Okay.
That's good. And the question is, why is it good? And I understand.
So I'm going to give you a tip, Charlie. if you get every time you say basic income is a redistribution of wealth, I'm probably going to move on to someone else.
But if he's saying one argument for a basic income, when he's saying one argument for a basic income is redistribution of wealth, which is something you could use it for.
That is one
That's
argument.
not the only way to use a basic income, but he's saying that's something you could use it for. So that's one of the things that's.
I mean, the basic income itself is just paying people. I mean, like, basic income is just paying people. It's not taxing people; it's paying people. Okay.
Well, you gotta get the money from somewhere.
Yes.
So the other thing that's interesting about the basically for the Economist article, the second one, it starts out with who are the supporters of basic income, and I found it rather interesting because you think that most of the larger percentage of people who are interested in implementing a basic income might have more socialist leanings, but interesting enough, there are libertarians turn out even saying that a basic income is a necessity to keep capitalism going in any kind of healthy way.
That was
Friedman, yes. Yeah, he was very capitalist.
So this is a common point that's brought up by proponents of basic income. And I would say that most of the proponents of basic income are left-leaning, liberal type people, socialists, that kind of thing. And I would also say that a lot of the things, that like Milton Friedman and Richard Nixon and all those people who the basic income proponents like to bring up as examples, I would say that the things that they were proposing weren't exactly basic incomes necessarily. They did want to have a guaranteed minimum income, but a lot of times it was guaranteed but conditional, or there's certain other things that made it not really like a true basic income.
But even if it was unconditional, though, now you have people who start their own businesses and compete in the market.
Oh yes,
because having for instance, you can buy on Amazon forever, but if you have something that's local and convenient and in your town, and someone creates a concept that is viable, then people might just go for the neighborhood business.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm saying we have to get more investment from ordinary people and not just the 1%.
So this is also a common point that's made that like basic income allows us to get more businesses going, more people can start businesses, that kind of thing.
It leads to more buying power too.
It certainly leads to more producing power. I would say the basic income itself is what leads to buying power, or maybe the wages that people get.
Both. Production. Right now we sort of have hampered production by leaving the production to such a few companies.
So I have a question, which is production hampered because our productive capacity is hampered, or is our production hampered because people don't have enough money to buy all the things they're capable of producing? Because if it's not due to the productive capacity, then adding more productive capacity isn't going to address the issue.
Well, I think the same kind of a third point, which is that people don't have the time or the money to be competitive, to enter the competitive market and offer more choices.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Slaves are competitive too. So the idea is that people need to have, so people, the reason for the whole idea of having ethical labor is for people to get something in return for their labor. Otherwise, it's slavery.
I think it's slavery if you don't have a choice, and I think for a lot of people,
yeah, but you can still be productive.
You can still be productive.
But that's the thing. I think the productivity is irrelevant in some ways to the basic income, because it seems like people are still keeping their jobs. It's more about whether basic income will give people more freedom.
Yeah.
Yes.
So the issue is straightforward, but as we mentioned earlier, you have the system, there's no safety net, so when the workers starve,
right.
And you put into a situation where you have to work for the interest of people who are political opponents of yours.
Yep, that's exactly right. So I think, while we don't have slavery in the sense that, we had it in centuries past, we do still have a situation where people don't have a choice. They have to work, and they can't say no to a job that's offered to them because they can't afford to. And I would say that that's pretty bad, and that's
exploitation.
I would say that it's bad for those people, and that it's similarly bad or analogously bad to slavery. I'm not going to say that it's that their conditions are as bad as
Capitalists wouldn't say it was exploitation.
I'm not saying it's exploitation.
But a capitalist, I think, would acknowledge that they have low bargaining power. So it's kind of a question of like, what language.
Would say they have low bargaining power.
They have low
Would say
bargaining
they take wrong with that. That's the way it is.
I would, so what I would say, so quickly on this point, what I would say is that if you live in a world where you can't refuse a job, if you live in an economy where you can't refuse a job that, you know, doesn't pay you enough or doesn't provide you enough of what you're looking for in a job, then I would say that that's more the fault of the economy than the fault of the employer. I wouldn't say that the employer is necessarily exploiting anyone. I would say that the economy is in a really bad state that's harmful to people, and that this is an issue to be addressed by policy and by the government.
Or the
So that's
UBI, because it.
well, that's included in policy.
UBI would help.
Yes.
Sure,
Yeah.
it could not force
Go
you to
ahead,
get a
John.
job that you don't want,
Or, hold on.
or get a job that you do want that doesn't pay as much
Yeah.
as,
Sorry, go ahead.
Alex, to me, you sound more and more Marxist.
Oh, great. That's what I'm going for.
How Marx introduced, this is what makes him different from his predecessors like Adam Smith.
Yeah.
Basic things about money, Adam Smith formulated pretty well. But Marx's contribution, he introduced the concept of abstract labor. And that abstract labor, there was no distinction between working as a digger or a teacher or a doctor or a researcher or whatever. You know, it's all the same. Now, in reality, in real life, of course, that abstract labor means nothing. And
Yes.
and again, I want to repeat the same thing. If everybody gets enough resources, I don't want to use the word money. I want to use enough resources, which provides food, shelter, clothes, healthcare.
Sure.
And if that, many people, if not most people, will never go to acquire some skills which will drive them.
All right, so this is what you're talking about.
you know, that Marx was against the UBI. He was against
Marx,
it.
as a matter of fact, Marx was against lots of things that now are attributed to him.
Yeah. So Marx, I mean, what you're describing is Marx's labor theory of value, where just the work in itself has value, and it doesn't matter what you're working on. I mean, like, it's a little more complicated. Labor creates value. That value fundamentally derives from labor, and no matter where you look, you know, everything that's been created came from labor somewhere. Maybe the machines were created by the labor of our ancestors, or intellectual. I don't know. Like, it all comes from labor. I agree with George that this is not a very useful way to think about the economy.
No, I support that idea.
Oh.
It's not that. It's not that. Everything does come from labor. Air is the most valuable resource you need. It costs you nothing.
Does it come from labor?
No. It costs you nothing. But it's so far. So everything depends on the level of technology and on the level of how much we pollute the environment and so on.
So the thing about the labor theory of value,
In a scuba tank, you have to charge to put it into the air compressor.
People are not supposed to
So-
live like this.
so the thing about the labor theory of value is that you can create a theory of value around just about anything, and you can come up with arguments for why, you know, the value of everything fundamentally derives from the value from the sun, from the energy provided by the sun, or from dirt, land, or, you know, like, you can, and then you can use the same arguments in support of labor theory of value to have, like, a wood theory of value or something like that. It's not, I mean, like, labor is special in our economy, but it's only special because it's the way that we expect people to get their incomes. And other than that, I think it's a resource just like any other. I don't think it's the fundamental source of all value. Now,
Can you do my job?
what's your job? I think I know you're a software developer, so yes.
No, I am not. I told you last time that I hate programming.
Yeah, but you were a software developer, and then you came to hate programming. But what's your job now? I could definitely do that. Actually, I did pretty bad at it. I like to work.
I don't understand what you're laughing about. Now I'm exploiting all of you because I get my pension from the state of Massachusetts. Because
You didn't hear what Alex said.
No, I didn't.
This doesn't come from anybody. It's
Yeah.
money out of nowhere. Just
Right.
falls on you.
And I know he's making fun of me, but that's actually what I believe. I don't think when the government spends money that they're spending taxpayer dollars. I just don't think that connection is fundamentally the thing. And I know a lot of you probably disagree with
So
me.
we
But
might
let's,
have a whole topic class, a whole like a meetup on like how to pay for it. But essentially we have all these points on the board. Maybe we should go back to like some of the. You might want to switch to the con side.
that's
Perfect. I'm free.
yeah. So here we've got the anti-basic income points, and I want to focus on the point that where is it? Premature. The idea, or actually, yeah, the idea that the problem basic income solves hasn't hit us yet. And I want to ask a question: what is the problem that basic income solves? Inequality.
Yeah.
Okay.
Basically, everything, as I said last time, 50% of our society has no wealth.
50% of our society has no wealth.
And in our society, I'm talking about our society, which is a free market type of economy. In order to get wealth, in order to advance, you need wealth. You can't get return on zero.
Right.
So basically, yeah, I don't really care about open mobility. I just care about people getting access to, as you were talking about, resources that enable them to become productive.
Yeah.
It's very hard to do that if you have nothing.
I think that's right.
So the basic income redistributes wealth, as I say again.
Okay.
And you get wealth.
So I hear inequality, and I also hear, in addition to inequality, the ability to kind of invest in things and start paying some other start small businesses.
Start small businesses. So let's say the problem is people can't start enough small businesses. Maybe we need more small businesses.
In terms of that.
The problem is inequality, and maybe we need wealth to be more evenly distributed, and some people believe that basic income can do that. George, go ahead. We're letting George stop now for a second. Yeah.
It is something totally different. You cannot solve the problem of inequality by providing basic income, because if you calculate the average amount of wealth in this country,
So George, what's the problem that basic income solves?
it only allows you to survive.
It solves the problem of basic survival.
Yes, that's all, and there it cannot be any other purpose.
That's all. The majority of the world is not really surviving.
At this time, I'm not talking about the whole world. The whole world is a very heterogeneous system, because, you know, $1 is enough to be a very wealthy person somewhere in the jungles, and it means absolutely nothing in this country. So it's not that. The problem is in this country, you lose a job. What do you do with that? First of all, you lose your capital.
Yeah.
First of all. Second, you probably your job didn't pay enough to create, like to have some savings enough to survive for a couple of years, which sometimes very often is necessary to find another job which matches your skills.
Yeah.
With your education, you don't want to go picking strawberries in California. There is a huge demand now that Trump is going to close the border. But you will never go. And if you do, I can tell you, it will be a huge mistake.
Don't worry about it.
I worry about your back, because I have to go. I was sad.
He's going to take your job every time.
Yeah.
I'm going to steal your job. Yeah. Ron.
I think I was thinking about poor communities. One of the problems that businesses don't have is because there's no resources for community small business.
Yeah.
So the UBI will allow some of the places actually economic deserts to actually grow.
Yeah.
I'd actually love to hear from everybody on this one. I think the problem itself seems like a basic question. Other people are willing to pay.
Yeah.
So I don't know much about choice, but in France, in the last election, one candidate proposed a basic income.
Yeah.
He proposed a basic income, and it was to solve the problem of lack of job. But so the argument from the candidate was more and more job losing because new technology. You have new jobs, of course, but generally there are more educated jobs, and jobs without education are less and less. And so it was his argument.
Yeah, to increase the further. It's the same in Holland and Finland. That's why in Finland at least that was the main argument to test the universal basic income.
Another thing I'm hearing here is this idea that you might have a generation gap in skills. So for example, like there are new jobs and people might need to build up the skills, but the previous generation isn't going to have them, and so they need something to survive or something.
And that's what you were getting at, Madeleine.
Is that what you're getting at?
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, it's started. I read a lot of this. They write a lot about this Finland project. That they're now stopping. So everybody says it has failed, but it hasn't failed because they don't even have the results yet.
They don't have the results yet, and they're actually they're continuing the planned experiment until the end of its scheduled time. I think they've just announced that they're not going to do more afterwards. So they've got this 2-year experiment. They're halfway through, roughly, maybe a little more than halfway. They're going to finish it out, and they're going to get the data and collect the results.
And the main reason for this is not because of the test itself, but because of the change in government.
Yeah.
You know, because less progressive leaders are not for.
I would like to talk about happiness.
Happiness.
In your article, maybe you know there is a research about happiness. Harvard University made it. It's the longest research about happiness. It's lasted for 70 years. Right. So the conclusion is that the close relationships, almost the only thing makes people happy. In your article, you say that taking care of our grandparents or children, it makes people happy. For money, there is a limit to make people happy. If you have an income below that money, you could be unhappy.
Right.
But if you have more income than that limit, it doesn't work for make more happy.
75,000.
Yeah, but as I said before, we should make the basic income limited because we shouldn't kill the people's productivity. Because for me, for some people, the money is a stimulator for people to become productive.
Yeah.
So and maybe in here, I don't know, nobody never lived in a socialist country.
I agree.
Yeah, I also live. I don't say I don't want to give any money to poor people, but for me, I was paying my for direct and indirect taxes. I was paying 60% of my salary. So, because government, political parties, the political parties, they are using this money in order to get more voting because they are spreading all the money before the election.
Yeah.
So this is a very big burden for people who work hard. So that's why this is another reason for me we should make it limited because we shouldn't kill people's activity.
I certainly think if you are funding basic income using taxes, then there's a limit. There's a much stricter limit to how far you can go with it because the taxation is always going to disrupt markets and change people's incentives.
And these are some of the points in this.
You object.
I object. There's a flaw in that.
Okay.
Which is that when people think of taxation, they always think of income tax. yes, there is not enough income to fund all these
Okay.
projects, but that's not where you should be getting the money from. It's wealth that you want to tax,
All
not
right.
income.
Objection sustained. We will move on.
That's what reason to go to 60% is that you're taxing income.
Yeah, no, I got it.
If you tax wealth, it would be like 4%.
So maybe
Yeah, I mean, I think if you tax the wealth, I mean, like no matter what taxes you're using, it affects people. You know, like it affects people's decision making.
4%. 4% of the United States' wealth covers the entire government budget, no deficit.
Okay. I don't think.
Well, that's it.
I don't know how useful that information is.
But I think there's a broader question
Yeah.
to ask the question of human capital, which is like how are various incentives changed by different economic policy changes? So by taxing or by giving people more money or whatever. This is a big point that the second article was talking about.
Right.
What will be the changes in people's incentives? And if we do it really quickly, especially, then maybe there's going to be unforeseen changes or we're not confident in how it's going to go and that kind of thing.
So
Why do we all assume that we can cut from tax?
well, I don't understand that.
Where does it come from?
Well, it would replace a lot of the entitlement programs that
Right.
we already
Oh, but the entitlement programs come from tax. So you're just taking your tax and moving it somewhere else. But I mean, you can't, it doesn't come out of nowhere. It's got to come out of something.
You're thinking,
Okay, so you don't want your taxes
Yeah,
I
we can
do. I'm just saying
you're-
tax.
Well,
Well,
it's
Okay.
been, well, like with the Minicom experiment in the 1970s, they found that the hospitalizations and things like that went down 8%. And they applied that today to Canada, and it's the total amount of their healthcare system that would be like $19 billion. And so that they would said that the basic income would cost like $78 billion or something like that. So that's covering a large portion of the basic
Right.
income.
So the idea is that if you fund the basic income through taxes, the side effects of the basic income might lower costs in other areas.
And there's also like people who have been imprisoned and are released have difficulty finding a job, and so recidivism goes way down if they have a basic income, or presumably.
Yeah, and that justice system, all of that is very expensive. So I think those are really good points. Yeah. So let's go back to the question of. So I actually think that's a good example of a problem that basic income solves, which is
And the money that you spend on the justice system could be used to fund the basic income. It's like a virtuous cycle.
Yeah, I mean, I tend to be of the mind that if you can afford a basic income, so I like to follow the resources. So if the hospitalizations and the police and the justice system are all using up some resource that would better go towards people's food or something like that, and you can actually point to those differences, then actually reducing the amount of hospitalization and imprisonment and all that stuff, which I think are good ends in their own. But if they're using up the same resources that could go towards people's basic needs, then reducing that stuff could actually help fund the basic income. But if it's not, if they're not using up the resources that would go to people's basic needs, then funding the basic income, the money that goes to funding the basic income can't really be lined up with the money that was going to these other things. You know what I mean? So to give a simpler example, imagine that there's this public park in a town, and some rich guy is like, oh, I'm going to pay millions of dollars and just like use this public park for me and my friends' private parties or something like that. Maybe he buys the park or something like that. That park is a resource that everyone can benefit from, and the fact that he spent this money in this way to take that resource away from people means that there's something very specific we can do. We can take away his ability. We can say, like, no, you're not allowed to take that park away from people. And maybe we wouldn't do it by taxing the money he would have spent, but maybe we do. I don't know. We do something to make to regulate that, to make sure that he doesn't do that to the resources available for the people. And I think when we think about taxation, we should think about the resources that are being used. So if someone's using a resource that would better go to another part of society or another part of the economy, then you can use taxes to lessen the amount of that behavior. And then it makes the resource available elsewhere. But this is only really necessary if you couldn't pay for the basic income in the first place. Like if the resources are there and the resources are available, then you can pay for the basic income. And I agree, like the resources are there. We have these extra resources.
4% of the entire United States covers everything.
All right. So I'm not talking about money. I'm talking about resources like
resources.
food.
4% of what we have, not money. What we have.
Charlie, but what of stuff that we have can be distributed. Imagine me living in Vienna, Austria.
So I'm going to interrupt you, George. I'm going to interrupt you. So I just want to quickly draw a distinction between what we have and what we're able to produce. Because a lot of times what the economy is able to produce is something that we would produce if people had money to buy it. And when I talk about resources, I'm talking about, like stuff that can go into production, stuff that would go into production if people had the incentive to produce the stuff. Yeah.
And that may give them the incentive.
To have a basic income, for sure. It's activating demand, which activates.
We're talking about two different things. Yeah. I'm talking about where you're going to get it from. You're talking about what it might stimulate.
Well, I'm not. So yeah, go ahead.
First of all, I just want to keep us oriented a little bit. This is all kind of addressing the counter argument of like, how are you going to pay for it? And if you pay for it through taxes, you get kind of resentment. And is it too much of a shock to the economy?
Well,
so just in terms of the argument,
because it's not just for one section; it's universal.
Right.
Yeah.
But if you imagine that it's funded through taxes, I think this argument goes that if you fund it through taxes, yeah, I might get, let's say it's funded through income tax, which I know you don't want to do, or even my own capital. I might pay $200,000 and get $1,000 back. That's still going to feel like I'm paying for it, and I think she thinks that will create resentment. So even though I'm getting the basic income, I'm paying far more than I'm getting as a really wealthy.
Because you're paying because you have.
Exactly. And I think that's the argument for where the resentment has changed. Well, but there would be an increase in the amount of that kind of tax.
It's true. No, it's true. Two things that clarify what you're saying. If I'm very, very wealthy, I don't want to give money to you. I want to keep it all myself. That's a basic truth. Not necessarily. No, I may have gotten wealthy, as many wealthy people that I know have, by luck. I may have just stumbled onto the right industry or took a chance and made it. Capitalism doesn't say it's not fair that you made it this way or that way. I'm wealthy. And if I'm wealthy, I don't particularly want to make you wealthy. Why should I? I mean, I made it, I got it, I'm allowed to do what I want with it, I don't want to give it to you. So that's statement one. Statement two is, if in fact somebody's going to take part of my wealth to benefit you, one thing I would like, at least as a basic thing, is that you hit me the way you hit everyone else. That you don't unfairly burden me in proportion to everybody else. That's why I say that if you take 4% of the wealth of the United States, you cover the entire government budget. And 4% of everybody. So the wealthy person doesn't get penalized and the poor person doesn't get penalized. For example, 50% of the people in the United States who pay zero tax because they have no wealth.
Hey, Charlie, would you like to have a future meetup to talk about like this specific plan? We can really kind of just yeah, because I don't think we have time to.
No, I'm just trying to clarify what she's saying.
Okay.
Is that it may not be fair in the sense that I don't want to do this, but at the very least, if you're going to make me do it, I want to make it so that everybody equally gets punished.
Yeah. And certainly, I think if you make it look like everyone's getting affected equally, then there's a lot less resentment from the people who feel like they're being treated unfairly, and I think that's a really important point.
Back to the subject of basic income itself, though. One thing that the Economist article, and I feel like it's one of these things that reoccurs at. It sort of relates to, so we have the title of the first article, your article, which is an idea of whose time has come. And so then you have the Economist article that's saying pretty much, and maybe this is not a direct quote from the other, but sort of, a presumed conclusion from it is that we need gradual change and we need to improve the existing systems. Now, how many times have we heard that?
Well, right. I mean, like, an idea whose time has come, and we're not ready for it yet. Like it's an idea. Exactly.
So I sort of equate that to the ACA as an example, as something
the American.
Is it the Affordable Care Act?
Affordable Care Act.
Obamacare.
Okay.
So with that, you have as far as countries throughout the world that have a single payer healthcare system, and so the U.S. consistently uses the argument that our time has not come for single payer healthcare like the rest of the world. Well, maybe this is our opportunity to try to implement this before corruption gets so far that we're not able to. Yeah. Well, but it's about the idea that of something that seems to make logical sense, that will give people buying, that will give people, okay, I will use a little bit of everybody's here wealth, a little bit of as far as a bit of purchasing power, but at the same time though, the argument that's always going to be used at a very critical moment is we don't want quick change. Let's try and see if we can do it. And then it ends up exacerbating the issue.
Yeah, and that's a tricky one because you don't want a sudden shock to the economy either. You don't want like.
Well, that's what they say a single payer would do to us. It would be a sudden shock to the economy.
Yeah.
What I heard from many ordinary people, and being, let's face it, being a foreigner, I'm sensitive to those things. And what I hear all the time, I will lose my possibility to choose a doctor.
So I want to get back to the question of what's the problem that basic income solves.
Just finish this one thought.
Yes.
You say that it's going to be a shock to the economy.
I'm not saying that anything in particular is going to be a shock to the economy.
What I don't understand is that people assume that it will change the labor market.
A basic income would?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whereas it's not at all.
I think.
Yeah, people assume that. People also assume that a single payer system would be an inefficient way to run healthcare because the fact that private industries can run it both better.
I mean, and so
and this is why America
to be clear, so guys, to be clear, any big change to the economy is going to affect all the markets. Like that's, you can't question that. That's just, we don't know. Maybe we don't know the exact effects, but a basic income would affect the labor market. Universal healthcare would certainly affect the healthcare market, and along with all of the other markets which are very connected to the healthcare market. And there's certainly arguments about in what ways various policy shifts would affect various markets and all of those things. And we're not going to get into all of that right now. But I think it's also true that if you do something all at once, like a really big thing all at once, then it's going to cause some kind of reverberations that some kind of shock.
Yeah, I see it all the time. They didn't collapse not too long ago. They had their
Oh yeah.
So I mean, the assumption is that the markets are robust enough to adjust to large changes like that. So capitalism can adjust to it once before.
Right. So I mean, it's the difference between knowing that some kind of thing is going to happen eventually, just because we live in an unstable system, like Ron is saying, or just like making a sudden shift now and then making it all happen now. And I think. Yeah.
I'm just going to say that I think what people might be picking up on is a frustration when this argument is used to kind of silence the question. Whereas actually it's not a black and white issue. So I myself would be very concerned with like a sudden massive change to really any complicated system that affects a lot of people. Yeah. But you can also roll out things gradually. So even if you have a certain goal, you don't have to make the change all at once. So perhaps there's a distinction between people using it as a rhetorical argument and the genuine concern that's kind of
the so-called laboratory of democracy in China and Vermont or something. And trying to single parent healthcare.
Well, that's actually a really interesting question. I don't want to derail us too much, but in terms of a shock to the whole economy, you might have to instead roll things out gradually across the whole economy. Because in a particular,
Like you can have, I don't know, like a public option or something like that. But so guys, any big change we make, any big change we make to public policy, to economic policy, if we do it all at once, it's going to cause a disruption, and we don't want that. But that doesn't mean we can't make big changes. We just got to roll them out gradually. And certainly, I think Darren is right, both Darren and Madeleine, that sometimes the argument that it would be too disruptive is as Bethany was saying, is a rhetorical way to get the thing not to happen at all, or it ends up kind of being that way in effect. But it's, you know, that doesn't mean that we should do things suddenly, and it doesn't mean that it's not a valid point. It's just we shouldn't use that point to prevent us from ultimately making the change.
So how do we know how Social Security would impact the economy?
How do
we know when we pass Social Security? So the justification was there that, oh, we got to stop elderly poverty, but how did we know that the impacts on the economy?
We didn't.
So we just passed it and crossed our fingers.
I mean, we passed it, but it was also something that would kind of you'd see the effects gradually, right, as people got.
We also let it wait till it was a huge problem.
It was not, Social Security was not created because somebody woke up one day and said, I think it's a good idea, we should have Social Security. They had a depression. They were desperate.
Yeah.
The only way Roosevelt could get the darn thing through Congress was that we had a depression. There were tons of Republicans who said, are you crazy? Guaranteeing money for people?
But that's the other thing. Has the time come? Are we waiting until things get extremely bad?
Usually in this country, to get anything done, you have to have a crisis.
Let's get back to.
And I guess there's the political side of that question, but right now maybe we're talking more like idealistically, we could do what we wanted to do, but it's a valid question.
In order to figure out whether basic income's time has come, we really need to define what the problem is that basic income solves.
People think of money as like speech or whatever, which is politics, but we can consider money as like voting as well. But you find out people, there's not enough demand for bread because people don't have the money for bread. So when they have the money and they want to spend on bread, then there's going to be more bread produced. And so that's the way.
Yeah, so basic income allows the economy to produce for people what it's already capable of producing, but people aren't buying. I think that's really kind of the fundamental issue.
The influence that you're talking about, the undue influence that wealthy people have.
Yeah. I'm curious to hear what Adam thinks the problem is that basic income solves.
I mean, for me, it totally depends on.
Yeah.
There's this huge bifurcation about whether you view it as redistribution or as like incentive, extracting latent productive capacity.
Right.
Yeah, it just feels like that's the main bifurcation. There's a bunch of arguments for redistribution and a bunch of arguments. I don't know. When you talk about it, like if that's right, it's kind of obvious, right? Like if you're just leaving goods on the table, you don't do it.
Right.
So I don't know.
So kind of either inequality issues or leaving goods on the table would be kind of like depending on the bifurcation.
I guess, yeah. I would say that.
I think we also haven't heard from our person.
Mike?
Okay. When I think about basic income, I sort of think of capitalism as like a giant competition of people competing against each other for money.
Yeah.
And governments like that. Right? And I guess basic income really seems sort of like the opposite of the competition. Part of the competition is people restricting like capital or inequality among people. So for me, it's sort of the opposite. You're trying to do a basic income. I don't know. See what over time, specifically with your idea. I'm not sure that sort of just kind of chilling out to the natural progression.
Yeah. So if you're not, so let me be clear that I understand what you're saying. So you're saying that if you're not taxing people in a way that kind of like lessens inequality, and you're just giving people money, then you'd see the same kind of inequality happening. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, and
So what's the problem that basic income solves?
I think the problem is pretty clear. I think we all agree.
It's just to help people. Okay. So has basic income's time come?
So it might depend on the answer.
It might depend on the answer you give for the question of what's the problem that basic income solves. So the basically flawed argument says that basic income solves the problem of a robot revolution taking everyone's jobs away. And certainly, if that happened, a basic income, would be useful. But is that really kind of like the fundamental thing that basic income solves?
So we've had different answers, and I guess like the inequality answer, certainly there is already a lot of inequality. So somebody could argue that time has come for them, the robot revolution time. The productive capacity argument, you're arguing that there already is a lot of productive capacity left on the table. So you've got to go through answer by answer.
And another question I might ask is this robot revolution ever going to come? Like, are we ever going to reach a point where, half of the jobs are going to disappear, or more than half of the jobs are going to disappear because of automation and AI or whatever? And I don't know.
Suppose it happens.
So,
I mean,
suppose it happens, a basic income would help, right?
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
So I mean,
It's already happening.
Yeah. So what do you mean by that?
We'll
go to that one first. Yeah.
A lot of things are becoming automated.
Yeah.
Not necessarily with services and the airport, and you have to decide, do your own thing, taking on the plane.
Sure.
Everything is. You have to do everything.
So why do we have a 3.9% unemployment rate?
What I'm saying is that you're saying that automation, you're questioning whether it will reduce work.
Yeah.
And I'm saying that it's already reducing work. People don't find full-time employment anymore. If they do, or they don't get health insurance coverage because they don't work full-time anymore, or they have to work 2 jobs.
And you feel that that's largely due to automation?
Right.
Okay. Good. Richard?
I think answer both of those. Like 3.9%
in
unemployment is because a lot of people are discouraged from working, and people who do not work, are not actively searching for work, are not counted in the unemployment rate.
Labor participation rate.
And the labor participation rate is like the lowest it's been in decades. It's like 62% or something like that. Well, 15 years ago or something, it was like 67. So that would easily be 10% or something like that right now.
So labor participation rate is 62.7 last month, and it's been in 62.5, 63 range for the past 4 years, I would say.
Is that all alive adults? What is that?
All
16
working age.
And there's the other question, which is a mismatch of not enough education for jobs that can be filled. But that could be one of the solutions that the UBI would provide, because then people would have more time.
People would have more time, or George might say that they would have more incentive not to educate themselves. So we could go either way.
There would be more time.
Yeah.
No, what? Yes. And then,
let's go to Richard.
And the example of what technology could replace eventually. Well, there's with automated vehicles. There's in the peripheral industries. There was 7 million jobs, and they could be automated overnight, pretty much within the next 10 years. And there, let's see, a semi-truck driver can't easily go become a software programmer or something. And when the software, the semi-driver stops going to the small town, then those, diner doesn't have anyone to cater to, and so they close down, and then the whole town suddenly, well, starts shrinking, and everyone has to move somewhere else.
Well, okay.
And may I add to this? It should also it should go upwards, because if you have
what should go upwards?
If you have so many more software developers, you need to have enough problems for them. And to have those problems, you need more research mathematicians or applied mathematicians. Not everybody can become an applied mathematician.
Yeah, programmers make their own problems. That's truer than would be ideal for society.
As the labor market is only going to be more towards professional careers, as manufacturing goes away, and everyone needs a college degree in order to get, professional employment. The issue with that is, will software engineers become the new coal miners?
They are already.
Maybe they are miners. So I think you bring up a good point, which is that there have been similar times in history where we've been in, a similar position where technology is advancing very rapidly, and a lot of jobs are kind of being eliminated or automated. We saw this with the Industrial Revolution, to bring up the Luddites again. And what happened in those times? How did we get through that? Or what was the result of that? Is it different than this time?
That's a good question. You don't know the answer. You don't know the answer.
Yeah.
And you're not going to get the answer by discussing it.
Well, I actually think I do have the answer. So if somebody else. I'll lay it on you. So
historically,
he's got the answer.
Well, of course I have the answer.
So I'll keep going.
Yeah.
Again,
Yes.
So suddenly they happen to lose their job.
Well, he's going to tell us what's going to happen in the future.
So in the past, we've smashed machines, we've had revolutions, and generally speaking, the people who lost their jobs, weren't able to easily transfer to some other form of work. There was a period of time where everyone was a farmer, and then a lot of them got factory jobs, but it wasn't, this kind of smooth transition. It never has been. But the economy keeps going, and we eventually get back to, a point of,
equilibrium.
I don't know about equilibrium, but we get back to a point of most people who should be working are working, who want to be working are working, that kind of thing. And how do we do that? I would argue that historically we've used economic policy to create jobs and to ensure that wages, are above a certain level, and we've really kind of as a society, we've internalized this idea that people should be getting their incomes from labor, but also the government has internalized this in terms of the economic policies that they implement. And this includes, monetary policy. The Fed, they have a dual mandate of keeping prices stable and promoting maximum employment. And they do it by, lowering interest rates, which increases the amount of investment in the economy and creates jobs. So we've always historically kind of come up with ways to make up work for people to do. Tariffs. So we've all heard about tariffs. So if China wants to sell us really, really cheap steel, that's great. Now we have a source of really, really cheap steel. But the problem is that now we don't have jobs. So instead of saying, oh, yay, let's get this cheap steel, we say, we want to be able to make our own steel, so we have an excuse to pay people for their labor. So we're basically making up work for people to do that doesn't need to be done. Do we need to protect an American car manufacturer who's, going to go under if the government doesn't bail them out? And well, we have access to cars from other sources. We can buy cars from Japan or wherever, or Europe. But the thing is, if we do that, then we lose some American jobs. So we have all these kind of economic policies that create and protect jobs for people.
But it's not only that.
Yeah.
Because when you get all the steel from China,
yeah,
not only you lose all those jobs,
yeah,
you become badly dependent on China. What if China decides to start a war with you?
So
you have no steel.
So here's my counter argument to that, which is that it's possible for us to maintain our productive capacity while only activating it when necessary. So we can upkeep our steel production facility and make sure that we're ready to go whenever we need to if we're worried about some kind of conflict with China, and that's much cheaper than actually producing our own steel.
Or we can import
kind of like keeping
from Europe or something as well.
We can import steel from Europe, but I think George is making a more specific point: is that if we become dependent, on a source of steel that's vastly cheaper than anything we could get anywhere else, and then we lose that source of steel, then we're in a bind. And I think we can maintain capacity. And that's
not
cheaper
just lose, you lose it in a very hostile manner. It's not just losing.
Right. Okay.
So
because China's like angry and yeah.
Look at Mr. Putin.
Okay. He's quite the specimen.
He's a good guy. Don't you talk against him. He's my best friend.
So I do.
Maybe yours.
I do
want to
he's
hold on.
So what it is proposing is different than what we typically do, though. So just to acknowledge that like it would be more like we keep an active military we don't know what to do. You'd sort of be keeping productive capacity around that you don't use, which would be cheaper. But I'm just acknowledging that it's something that people are not familiar with, because it's not something that we
You will be falling behind the new technological level if you just keep a certain amount. Trust me, I work for that industry, okay? I know what I'm talking about. It's not just speculation.
I trust that you've worked in the industry. I trust that you know your own experiences.
That you don't think that we would fall behind. You think we could actively maintain?
I mean, I don't think that's a necessary consequence. I think there are ways of doing it where we don't fall behind. Like we can have a military that's funded and state of the art without actually going. Maybe not actually. Maybe we just make it worse to keep our military.
So you have a solution for the labor market, for the creating, for keeping jobs, creating jobs.
Yeah,
the largest part of the economy is not consistent.
What do you mean by the largest part of the economy?
The largest part of our wealth is wealth from capital.
It's capital.
I agree. Yeah.
There's
yes.
But that doesn't mean we don't have this social expectation that people get their income from labor. And it doesn't mean that we don't have economic policy that that forces people to get their income from labor when they don't have a choice, or that forces labor to provide income to people as a way of keeping everyone employed and keeping the economy going. So yeah. So what?
And that's getting worse.
Yeah, that's true. That's why we're going back to this issue of wouldn't it be more productive and better for the economy to have more equal distribution of wealth? There's a way of doing that. Tax wealth, and you redistribute it.
Well,
that's exactly the point.
So let's get back to the question. I want to hear from Mike.
Yeah, I think that you're talking about is more of a philosophical question. So like your methods to boost the economy, make everyone. It's kind of a question is that.
Well, my method. I'm saying that the government has done this historically.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, yeah. I guess going forward, is that a good idea?
Is it a good idea? Has it ever been a good idea? And if it's a bad idea, what's to stop us from continuing to do it this way? To make up work for people to do just as an excuse to give them money. Like if we have a robot revolution that destroys all the jobs, what's to stop economic policy from just creating a bunch of new jobs for people?
What's going to motivate?
What's going to motivate the government to do that? What's always motivated them?
What's the value?
Well, the way I see history is that.
Well, why have we been doing it for centuries?
Because I don't think we have been doing it for centuries.
You don't.
I think we created jobs in the Depression out of desperation. But before the Depression, I don't think people were sitting around saying, "Oh my God, we've got to get everybody to work."
Why?
Support themselves.
Why do we have economic policy that promotes full employment? Why do we have monetary policy that says, part of the job of the Fed is to keep everyone employed? What's that about? And what is it about when, like a politician gets up there and has this plan and says like, it'll create so many jobs? Why is he saying that? Why is that a selling point for a political thing?
We definitely think that's a good idea, but we don't do it. We just talk about it.
Do we not do it?
Unless there's a crisis, we don't scramble to create.
Not anywhere else. It's about when someone is promising jobs or when people are thinking of is that if it's not, for some people they're thinking it's intended to my survival. For others, they're thinking that it would be better jobs and that they're going to get more freedom that comes with having more money. Right. So that's mainly what it is again, is the basic income, going to basically provide more freedom for people.
Yeah. There's a huge section of the United States, Appalachia, and parts of the Midwest. People don't work. They mostly do drugs because they're totally depressed. I don't see the government. Rust Belt and Appalachia. I don't see the government stepping in. We got to get these people jobs.
Yeah, it's usually kind of an aggregate thing for the economy. I mean, like sometimes there are specific job programs in specific areas, but it's usually like macroeconomic policy or something like that, looking at overall statistics and saying like what are the impacts of
working.
So we kind of have the number of the population of the world have a lot.
What will happen?
To keep the limited the number of the population of the world.
The basic income would help with that.
No, I mean, if we can keep its limited.
Yeah.
Population. Yeah, population, because it's a big problem. Actually, we have a video for you. This is a little
yeah,
so I will send you a video. So it turns
yeah.
out that the population level is expected to stabilize at 11 billion because we've already reached like peak child. So there's a whole long discussion of it, but it's not as much of a problem as people think.
We're pretty sure at this point that we do not have a population problem. And Hans Rosling is a fantastic statistician who died last year, but his presentations are great, and he's got a great one on the population issue. And we'll send you that video. It's
really good. It's really good. It's surprising to like some countries.
Right, as Madeleine was saying, in some countries even they're worried about population, like Japan and places like that. The elderly people are outnumbering people. Go ahead. Don't worry about it. I'll send you a video, but we can talk about this more later.
One of the reasons why the politicians are trying to promote job creation is because they all ingrained in the American psyche with the whole honesty work ethic, if you will, and how if people who don't work have idle hands do the devil's work or whatever it is.
There are lots of idle hands in Appalachia.
Right, so I think we have two things that are true maybe at the same time, which is that the government does some things to increase jobs like tariffs and not things to increase jobs as much as maybe people with more population.
So,
but I also want to add that in a way else you're articulating another problem you think basic income would solve, which is people spending their time doing things that are not actually productive for the economy, or at least for the global economy.
Yeah,
absolutely, but
right.
I mean, if
you can do that with the
spend
basic income, and then they don't have to be working a pointless job anymore.
Right. If the job is
so we're getting pretty close to the end, but I just want to say that for me, this is the fundamental problem that basic income solves. The problem that basic income solves is that without a basic income, when we have the robot revolution, we're just going to make up jobs for people to do like we always have. Basic income allows the robot revolution. It allows automation to eliminate the unneeded jobs that should be eliminated by that revolution. And it also allows us to eliminate jobs that should have been eliminated a long, long time ago. And I would say, has basic income's time come? I would say basic income's time came 200 years ago when the Industrial Revolution was happening. And, what's the amount of the basic income that would have been sustainable then? I don't know, but, yeah. So actually, what I want to do is I want to do what we did last week and go around and get kind of closing thoughts from everyone, especially if you have a question that you want to ask for next time. And Bethany, can you take notes on this again? Yeah. So let's start with Charlie and go around counterclockwise.
I don't have a question. I think my main question sort of was addressed, which is what is the argument in favor of what I call redistribution of wealth? Why would that be good for the economy? Because I'm talking about arguing to someone who isn't already on our side, so to speak. I have no problem with advocating basic income, but I'm talking about talking to somebody, say, like Congress, where the people, don't forget, Congress is trying to slash Social Security. We're not talking about arguing for basic income. They want to take away stuff, not give stuff. So what's the argument that they are not able to refute? They can't say, you like that, but that's ridiculous.
So what's the argument for basic income that Congress is unable to refute?
And George says that my argument's no good. My argument was societies that seem to have more equal distribution of wealth do better productively. He says not so.
Right.
Look
I
at
said,
Russia.
and you already said that you admitted that that's pretty weak.
And I said it's a weak
Yeah,
argument.
I think so too. We'll get to that more another time.
Are you saying any question right now?
Okay, Benjamin. Yeah.
So we spoke about reforming the system of taxing on income.
Yeah.
The candidate and the proposed tax machine for continuing machines.
Tax the machines.
So it's a good idea to tax the machines.
Yeah, just.
Because if machines are workers, then okay. Yeah, that's a good one. Mike,
Did you say that that he is proposing taxing machines? Oh, the water.
Yeah.
Oh.
Who else?
Bill Gates also proposed something like that. Mike, go ahead. What does basic income look like over time? Cool. That's a good one. Richard.
Well, we can have a session about how to fund the basic income with like land value tax or carbon tax or capital tax, like how much, like 1% of all the money put into the stock market. You can find out how to do that work.
So what are our options in terms of taxation? What are some of the best taxes?
Tax on Wall Street speculation, I think you're right to say, yeah.
Okay. All right, Mom.
I'm interested in hearing your idea about untapped economic potential, to see how that would actually displace taxation. Because I don't imagine.
I don't think it would displace. No, you're right. Sorry, I just got so tempted. Yeah.
That's something I'm interested in.
Cool. Yeah, we'll talk more about that. George.
Government cannot create new jobs, or rather, it can create only within the limits that the current technological level allows.
Okay.
Neither Clinton nor Donald Trump, like any mechanism can destroy a lot in the economy, but they cannot create any prosperity and no jobs. It all depends on the level of development of technology.
So can the government create jobs?
Yes, actually, they can create. They can do public jobs, government.
They can build roads.
To what extent can the government create prosperity, if at all? So that's kind of, I'm phrasing it in a question.
Yeah. Yes, this is number one.
Yeah.
Number two.
Yeah.
It's got lost with the discussion.
Okay.
What's exploitation? What's not?
What is exploitation?
Oh, that's a good one.
No, because I can tell you that in the production, it's easy to define what exploitation is. In like.
All right. So we're gonna write that down and have that be on our minds for the future. Adam.
I mean, you know what I'm interested in. Something I was interested in.
Yeah. Okay.
Sorry, I was thinking that my biggest thing I'm most interested in is Alex's crazy ideas about deficit spending and untapped economic potential.
Cool. Did you read my paper?
I did.
Really?
Halfway.
Okay.
Can you link these resources?
I'm The paper is still in draft form, but I can send it to you.
Yeah, that
I'll
would
send
be
it. You want that too?
Sure.
And also the movie you mentioned.
Oh, yeah, that movie.
Oh, I can link that.
You can link that,
for
yeah.
sure. Yeah, Mad is Money. Yeah. Darren.
I would also like to find out time as far as whether or not, as far as defining, yeah, I'd like to get more into as far as two things, either as far as the topic as about whether or not capitalism without basic income is exploitative. But number two, another thing would be, one thing that's been on my mind is the counter argument of basic income driving, just the natural level of inflation. I know this guy named Peter Schiff, who talks about basically getting rid of every government program out there, like a total anarcho-libertarian. He so-called predicted the 2008 housing crisis.
There are a lot of people who so-called predicted that.
But this guy, as far as his, basically, but he's a big person on YouTube.
Cool.
And yeah, a very big person on YouTube. And so, and he's been like several news programs, etc. But he, knowing how he would approach the topic, he would probably would say that it would interfere with letting economic catastrophe happen, which would then lower prices naturally.
So how would Peter Schiff think about basic income, and would you say that it would interfere with the economy's natural purgative,
He'd say that as soon as people get the basic income, that the people who sell the products would just increase the prices on the products now that people have
That's
these incomes.
We'll get to that one.
Yeah.
That's a lot of people argument. Yeah. But yes, Madeleine.
Well, I'm mostly interested in the moral aspect of the environment. I think one of the reasons that it's so exists is moral and not. I don't really believe in economic problems.
Yeah, I think that's a good one. Yeah. And you brought that up in your article too, and I wanted to get to that more. But,
and there's a lot of stuff that is interesting
cool.
to me.
Great. Good
What
stuff.
guy's name is
Philippe Paris. He's the guy who I learned about basic income. Well, actually, I kind of came up with the idea for basic income on my own, and then I went out and looked, and he's the guy I found. So he's kind of like,
But there's a lot of philosophers who are really against it. So it might be an interesting.
Right. The ethical program.
Yeah. Bethany, did you have anything?
No,
Question for next time.
I have some thoughts on what we might be constructive on to focus on sooner rather than later, things that keep coming up on the group. So how to pay for it.
How to pay for it.
Since you would lead to your own ideas a lot, also your ideas, which are
My
highly
ideas.
related to one way of how to pay for it.
Yeah.
So I think those we might as well address those sooner rather than later in the group or think about them together because they kind of
sure. Okay. Yeah, and for next week, I want everyone to let me know how they feel about the format of this. This is only our third meetup, and it's been different every time. It's great having you here. I love this. This is our first time doing a live stream. I think we're probably going to continue it unless people really don't like the live stream. For next week, I've talked to Richard about some possibilities for what we can talk about next week. And did you have a chance to look at that debate I sent you? The Intelligence Squared debate about basic income?
I told you you can have segments from that, and then we can plan on the mass intelligence.
So there's this debate from like a year ago about basic income, and it's got the pro-basic income side is it Andy Stern, the former head of the SCA, and Charles Murray, the guy who wrote the Bell Curve. That's what he's famous for. But he also wrote a book about something that's similar to basic income. So that's the pro side. And
Who's the guy,
Andy Stern. Yeah, he wrote a book about basic income.
And he was the head of what?
The Service Employees International Union. Yeah. Yeah, and then on the pro side are a couple of Obama, or on the con side, anti-basic income side, are a couple of kind of Obama type officials. Jason Furman is a former economic advisor to President Obama, and the anti-basic income side of this debate completely demolishes the pro-basic income side, and obviously that's way more interesting than reading just the typical pro-basic income arguments. So this debate is like an hour and a half long. As with everything, it's optional. You don't have to watch the whole thing, but it's only 45 minutes long if you watch it on double speed. And what did I say?
45.
If you watch it on double speed.
Yeah, on double speed, it's 45 minutes. Yeah. So I'll send the link. What we're probably like, I might find specific. Yeah, but he's on the side of basic income, so yeah.
No.
Yeah.
He's on the side.
He's pro basic income.
He got demolished?
He got demolished. He got demolished by some Obama types. Yeah. So it's a really fascinating debate, and I think it's indicative of how the basic income debate usually goes. Usually the pro basic income side loses horribly. So let's look at it. We're gonna talk about it, and maybe we'll watch a few clips from it in here during the. I don't know how that will work with the live
To
stream.
your point about how to make a stronger argument.
Yeah.
I figured we would be against it.
So that's it, guys. Thanks all two of you people for watching on the live stream. And, thanks for hope to see people.
Next time, I want to see you eat more than.
Yeah.
I know.
Other people should please take that.